people by organizing free, transparent, and credible elections. We're joined this morning by Chrys Anyanwu, who is the Executive Director, Global Advocacy for African Affairs. Chrys Anyanwu, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. My pleasure.
All right. Of course, coup has generated loads of talking points across the continent and, in fact, across the world. The swearing in of the new interim leader, many, of course, would describe it as very insincere, because this is what happens in many times when there's a coup. You swear in an interim president, who actually, of course, organized the coup, and then he just never leaves. Do you expect that this is the same thing that would play out here?
Well, thank you. Queues remains, queues all over the world. It's even more interesting the way it plays out in Africa. You first of all ask, how do they come into power? They come by reinstating the obvious corruption, poverty, and all that. And then before you know it, the same thing that they actually condemned and fought for, becomes the order of the day. However, in this instance, there's a bit of something very interesting in the Gabon scenario. You see, most people that have reacted to the incident in Gabon, the EU, the US, even the UN, all were very unanimous in condemning the last election in Gabon, which was actually the last stroke that broke the camel's back. So, and then while condemning the coup, of course, that is expected. Nobody ever want to support coup or unconstitutional takeover of government. But there was unanimity in condemning the last election. I think that's a very interesting scenario here. Unlike what happened in Niger, where everybody, we are shouting to high heavens, the civilian government must be restored back. So I think there's a lot of things that it's cut out for the ECA, the Economic Community of Central African States. I think a lot of job is there for the AU to focus on in making sure that the young man, even as he has promised, to conduct election, transparent and very free election in Gabon, even though he was very diplomatic and very strategic about that comment, because he wasn't emphatic about time frame when he intends to conduct that election. But I think in international politics, diplomacy remains a very key, very strategic tool of engagement. So I think what the regional bodies and everybody that is interested in the Gabon scenario should focus on right now is bringing in the young guy and making sure they apply that soft and subtle pressure to ensure that he conduct election as quickly as possible. There's also another interesting dynamic in the Gabon scenario, where the opposition opposition party have actually laid claim to winning the last election, and of course, while also appreciating the military for taking over, also appeal to them to continue the vote counting process in order to announce the result and restore power to the opposition, who they claim actually won the last election. So I think the focus for now should be, on the guy, the general in Nguema, to actually begin the process of restoring power back to civilian, which is what is fashionable across the world. Unfortunately, Gabon has been they've been so deprived. One family has held sway for over 50 years. In fact, in the entire life span of Gabon after independence in 1967, they have only known 3 presidents, and 2 from one family. Okay, yeah. And that is strange. That's ridiculous. And of course, even the guy in question, the guy that has just been sworn in, has also been part of the administration. Recall he worked as the the Secret Service chief to the elder Bongo, Omar Bongo. And then he has been around. He has been the head of the body, the presidential guys and all that. And he's even the cousin to the president, the ousted president. So he's been around. So Gabon has never really enjoyed democracy, so to say, or known, the various flavors and varieties of democracy like other countries. But of course, the entire world is interested on what is happening in Gabon and looking forward to when Gabon will be when the junta will be restored.
All right. Very interesting standpoint you mentioned there. In fact, the opposition have said that his swearing in is a continuation of the Bongos dynasty because they don't believe that he's any different from the people, because he'd worked with them, like you mentioned, he served with them, and there are speculations that they might actually be related. So I wonder if this is going to be any different for the people of Gabon. Also, what are the potential economic repercussions of this political change in Gabon? How do you see that this will affect regional trade and investments in Central Africa?
Of course, anywhere you have coup in the world, there are always implications. And there's no difference in what is happening and what has just happened in Gabon. There will be sanctions from the regional bodies, there will be sanctions from here and then and all that. So, and the funny thing or the unfortunate thing is that it's still the citizens who have been deprived, that will suffer it at the end of the day. So there's going to be economic sanctions. There's going to be people of course, immediately after the announcement of the coup, they also announced that the borders have been closed, a lot of things, and just like what happened in Niger. So that's always some of the implications, the aftermath of unconstitutional takeover of powers across the world. And the long effect, or the long-term effect of this entire thing is that the citizens who have been at the forefront of this deprivation will continue to suffer at the end of the day. So it's normal. The economic implication is going to be so biting, and of course, while and that's why I mentioned that diplomacy should be the order of the day. You see, the idea of we're going to invade and all those things has never worked anywhere, and so I think what the interested parties should be focusing on right now is bringing in the guy in and making sure they mount subtle pressure through diplomacy and all that. Was with the aim of ensuring that as quickly as possible, power elections is conducted in Ghana, and then power is being transmitted to who the power is.
All right. We of course struggling with that connection once again. Chrys Anyanwu speaking with us on the situation in Gabon. Of course, as it's